Welcome to God's Rescue and Restoration Plan, Session 8. We're going to be spending time with Joseph today. As you recall from the last session, Jacob had 12 sons. So we're going to focus on Joseph, who was the firstborn of Rachel. And he was born in 1703 BC. So you see him there on the timeline. And I want to talk a little bit about why we're going to spend this time today reading scripture. We're just basically we're going to read and go through records of Joseph. And I think it's really important to do this for a number of reasons. One is, first of all, Genesis, the book of Genesis covers about 2,400 years, 2,400 years of biblical history, starting with Adam and going all the way through. And it does that in 50 chapters. 14 of those chapters are the life of Joseph. So that's like 30% of the book that covers 2,400 years is Joseph. And it's really, he was in a very critical time and moment in God's rescue and restoration plan. And we recognize this in retrospect, but it was on the verge of failing because the bloodline of Christ was about to get stopped with what happens. And we'll see this unfold over this session and probably into the next session as well. Now, what's going on here? But another part of this, though, is that the last session we spent time recognizing that people are flawed. We all have flawed nature, and a lot of times people behave that way. Joseph has a flawed nature too, but he chose to live more flawlessly. He is really noble and he's a wonderful example for us. And he's living in this critical time, this critical moment of God's time of what's happening. And I think that you and I today are living in a critical time as well. We are in a very unique time in God's plan right now today, I believe. And so we can learn from someone who's been there, done that. We can be inspired by his life. We can learn from what he's done. And so when we go through this record, we're going to read it and I'll elaborate in places. If something pops in your mind, a light bulb goes off, or you think of a comment or something really gels with you, write it out down for yourself. That can be the Spirit of God working in you to point something out. And so write them down and think about them after we're finished, and maybe read the record again if that's appropriate for your note. So just really be active in this and enjoy this. This is just great Bible that God wanted to share with us. So here we go. These are the descendants of Jacob. Jacob, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a young man working together with the sons of Bilhah, Zilpah, his father's wives. But Joseph gave a bad report about them to their father. He squealed on his brothers. He ratted them out. They weren't doing something or whatever, but he told on them. He told his father. They probably didn't like that. Verse 3, now Israel loved Joseph. His father loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a multicolored tunic. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Every conversation was not peaceful. It was contentious. And verse 5, Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. And he said to them, listen to this dream I've dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf rose up, also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brother said to him, will you reign, yes, reign as king over us? Or will you rule, yes, rule us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Now, Joseph had to know that they didn't appreciate this. But it didn't stop him from saying it, did it? And that's an interesting thing. You know, this is an example of revelation knowledge being provided to Joseph, word of knowledge. It provides information, and in this case, prophetic information. And he shared it. Sometimes when you receive information by revelation, you're not supposed to share it. It's just for you and for your understanding and your knowledge. And God's telling you something. But sometimes it's okay to say it. Sometimes you're given direction to say it. And I'm not sure which it was for Joseph, but I'm glad it's in this record because it really helps it, and I think it helped them later on in life when these things happened. Verse 9, then he dreamed another dream, and he told it to his brothers and said, Behold, I've dreamed another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. And when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him, said to him, What is this dream you've been dreaming? Will we come? Yes, come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow down to the ground before you? They completely understood the symbolism in that dream. They understood it as soon as he said it, what was going on there. And it bothered him. His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. And he has had some experience with dreams from God, and he sees how they come to fruition over time. And so he's keeping this. He said, if this is real, I wonder if this is real. And maybe it is. And he kept the matter in his mind. So skip forward a bit. And Israel said to Joseph, Aren't your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them. And he said to him, I'm ready. And so Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. So we're going to take a look at the map here. Here's the Dead Sea. The Sea of Galilee is up here off the map there, but they're starting here in Hebron. This is where Israel and Joseph was starting from, and this is where Shechem is up here. These are mountains. The geography of Israel is such that along the Mediterranean Sea, it's flat, and the Jordan River Valley is flat, and in between are mountains. And this is very rugged territory, great for grazing, and it gets more rain up there, so the pastures there. And he went to Shechem because that's where he thought they were. But when he got there, he couldn't find them, and he got some help, and they got steered over to Dothan, which is right here. And this green arrow is kind of showing the path. There was a major highway for foot traffic, a path, if you will, a roadway, a way of traveling that was commonly used along the coast. When traders wanted to come from the east and north, and they wanted to get down to Egypt, where the market was, they would go down, they had to go through Israel, and they would choose this path. And so there was a lot of traffic along the coast. It's flat, it's easy to travel. So that was and it was fairly short too. This path is also possible, but it's very mountainous and rugged, so people generally wouldn't go that way. But it was very common to go along this green path. So there would be the caravans would come from other countries. They would come from other regions of the east and come through here with camels, caravans that could easily have several thousand camels in their caravans. And the reason they were so large is because they wanted to travel together for protection from bandits, robbers, people who would steal and kill them, and so on and so forth. So they always would get a big group together. And it was very common to have 2,000-3,000 camels, that large of a caravan coming through. And they had to carry all their supplies for a long, long journey. They had their tents that they would set up, and when they would stop for a while, the goods that they were selling, the merchandise, carrying people, and just a lot of things going on that were moving in this caravan. And so they were huge. And that is happening. It's passing right by Dothan. So that's why it's important to know that. Well, here comes Joseph. He's found him, and they see him, verse 18, off in the distance. Before he came close to them, they conspired against him to kill him. And they said one to another, Look, this master of dreams is coming. So now come, let's kill him. Throw him into one of the cisterns, and we'll say a wild animal has devoured him. And then we'll see what will become of his dreams. You can't bow down to a dead person. So they're pretty evil. But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, We must not take his life. And Reuben said to him, Shed no blood. Throw him into the cistern that's here in the countryside, but do not lay your hands on him. And he said that so that he could deliver him out of their hand to return him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the multicolored tunic that he had on, And they took him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty, no water in it. Cistern was just a big hole in the ground dug by some men, and it was large. They filled it with water so that they had a water supply, and it would have a top on it with a smallish opening to get through it. But they threw them. It could be really deep too. So this one didn't have any water in it, so there wasn't any threat in that way. But still, you throw someone down to a pit like that, put the top on, and it would be quite concerning being in there. They threw him in there, and then what they do? They sat down to eat lunch. They sat down to eat their food. Joseph is probably just right over there, and he's probably hollering and begging for help and get me out of here. What are you doing? And that kind of thing. He'd be very distraught. And they sat down to eat their food. And they lifted up their eyes and they looked and they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. So this is a caravan. And their camels were carrying spices and balm and myrrh going down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? There's nothing in it for us other than we remove him. But come, and let's sell him to the Ishmaelites, and not let our hand be upon him, for he's our brother, our flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Hey, this is a way we can make some money out of the deal and get rid of him. It's a win-win situation. And so they went for it. And some Midianite men who were merchants passed by, and the brothers pulled him up and drew Joseph out of the cistern and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph to Egypt. And I read somewhere that 20 pieces of silver was like the average rate for a slave. So that's what you could sell somebody for. Wow. And he didn't do anything to anybody. He's not, yeah. When Reuben returned to the cistern, behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he tore his clothes. He was distraught. And he returned to his brothers and said, "The child is no more. And where am I to go?" He's, as the oldest brother, he's responsible for this. And what am I going to do? So they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat, dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they took the multicolored tunic, brought it to their father, and said, "We have found this. Please identify it, whether it is your son's tunic or not." And he did identify, and he said, "It's my son's tunic. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is torn to pieces." And so Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. He said, "No, no, I will go down to Sheol, my son. I'll go to my grave mourning." And his father wept for him. He was so distraught, so disturbed. And at that time, meanwhile, the Midianites sold him, Joseph, in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's, the captain of the guard. That's what's going on. Now, Joseph was brought down to Egypt. Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the hand of the Ishmaelites that had brought him down there. So he's a wealthy guy. He's an officer in the Pharaoh's structure, organization, if you will, government. In reading commentary and stuff, they're not exactly sure what this position is, but he clearly had a position of authority, and wealth came with that. But Yahweh, verse 2, he just got sold. He got thrown in the cistern by his brothers, sold to the Midianites, then resold as a slave to an Egyptian, and he hasn't done anything wrong. Bad things are happening to him. He's done nothing wrong. But verse 2, Yahweh was with Joseph. So he became a successful man. Even in that context of being a slave in a foreign country, he became a successful man because Yahweh's with him. And he was in the house of his lord the Egyptian. His lord saw that Yahweh was with him and that Yahweh made all that he did successful. So Joseph found favor in his eyes, and he became his personal attendant. And Potiphar made him overseer over his house and put all that he had into his hand. He really trusted Joseph. Joseph was running his empire, so to speak, his estate, everything that he had, it was in his hand, and he must have been really good at it, and God was blessing him. And from the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, Yahweh blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. And the blessing of Yahweh was on all that he had, both in the house and in the field, because Yahweh was with Joseph. And Yahweh is with us. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whatever our role is, Yahweh's with us. And he can bless not only us, he can bless those that we are working with. He can bless the situations that we're in, and we can claim that. It's something God can do. I think it was Gary was talking about we're walking on holy ground because we are holy. We are his holy ones. That's what that means. We're born of God's Spirit. We have his seed in us. We have Holy Spirit in us, and we are his children, and we are blessed. And he will bless us, and he will bless our efforts as long as they're godly. So he left all that he had in Joseph's hand. He did not concern himself with anything except for the food that he ate. Well, now Joseph was well built and handsome. It's an interesting comment to put in the Bible. And it's interesting in that that particular phrase is only used twice in the Bible. This is one of them. And the other one is expressed in a feminine nature about Rachel, his mother. Those two are the only two that are referred to that way. She had I forget, beautiful figure, and she was beautiful or attractive, something like that is what it says. And it's the same phrase as this one, except that the feminine form and for him, the masculine form. He's well built, he's handsome. And after these things, his Lord's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." So she's trying to seduce him. She wants to have sex with him. But he refused, and he said to his Lord's wife, "Behold, with me here, my Lord does not concern himself with anything in the house, because I'm here. And he has put all that he has into my hand. There's no one greater in this household than I am, and he has not kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And I just love that he said that. He didn't say, "How could I do this great wickedness against your husband, Potiphar?" He didn't say that. He said wickedness and sin against God. His standard for living and behavior was God. They didn't have the law of Moses yet either, but they knew what was right and what was right with God, and he knew that would be great wickedness and sin against God, and he wanted no part of it. But she didn't give up. Verse 10, even though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her, to lie beside her, to be with her. Not doing that. One such day, verse 11, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were inside, she grabbed him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and ran outside. "Get away, get away." And when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, "Behold, he's brought in a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me. He was going to rape me." And I cried out with a loud voice. And when he heard that I raised my voice and cried out, he left the garment beside me and fled outside. She's just lying about it. She kept his garment by her until his Lord came home. And then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, "The Hebrew servant whom you have brought to us came in to me to mock me. But as soon as I raised my voice and cried out, he left his garment with me and fled outside. And when his Lord heard the words of his wife that she spoke to him, 'This is what your servant did to me,' his anger flared up." And what did he do? When Joseph's Lord took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. Again, he's not done anything wrong. He is living honorably. He is making the right choices. And he can't catch a break, it seems like. It gets worse and worse. Now he's in prison. He's in the dungeon. This is a place where the Pharaoh puts his enemies and his prisoners in. That's where he is, in the prison. Verse 21 says, "But Yahweh was with Joseph, even in the prison." He's not letting him go. "And extended covenant faithfulness to him, and gave him favor in the eyes of the warden of the prison." The prison warden committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. They're yours. And he was in charge of everything that was done there. The prison warden did not concern himself with anything that was under Joseph's hand because Yahweh was with him, and whatever he did, Yahweh made successful. And after these things, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt committed an offense against the Lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers against the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he served them. He served them. And they stayed in prison many days. The chief cupbearer, well, first of all, one way people were always trying to knock off whoever the king was. And one of the ways you could do that is poison him. And so they were concerned about that. So they had to make sure you had very good and loyal people cooking the food, like the chief baker. And you had to make sure that nothing slipped anything in the beverage. And so when the cup of whatever was the Pharaoh was going to drink, the cupbearer would drink it first, and then they'd watch and they'd see what happened to him. And if it was poison, he would die. So because of that security, that was a very important position to have. And that's who the cupbearer was, the chief cupbearer. So anyway, that's kind of what's behind that. Important people. And verse 5, they both dreamed a dream on that same night. Each man had his own dream. Each man, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were bound in prison, and his own dream, and each dream had its own interpretation. So when Joseph went to them in the morning and looked at them, behold, they were troubled. You know, they're already in prison, so they're probably somewhat troubled anyway. But this was especially troubled. He noticed that there was something different. And so he asked the Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his Lord's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today? What's happened? Is something wrong? Tell me what's going on." And they said to him, "We've dreamed a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it." And Joseph said to them, "Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell it to me." The chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream, behold, a vine was in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. And as soon as it was budding, the blossoms came up, and its clusters ripened into grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I put the cup into Pharaoh's hand." And Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days, and 3 more days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will place Pharaoh's cup into his hand the way you did when you were his cupbearer." So that's good news. 3 days. Good news. Well, please, though, remember me when it is well with you. And please show kindness to me and make mention of me to Pharaoh and bring me out of this place. For indeed, I was stolen, yes, stolen from the land of the Hebrews. And here also, I've done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. I'm blameless. I've not done anything wrong to anybody, but all this has happened, and here I am. So please put in a good word for me when you get out and your life is restored to you. Well, the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, so he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, 3 wicker baskets were on my head. In the uppermost basket there were all kinds of baked food for Pharaoh, and the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. And Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off you and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from off you." That's a lot different result. And thus it happened. Verse 20, on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a banquet for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among the servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. It's only 3 days ago they got this dream and interpretation. It's only been 3 days, and he's already forgot about him. Is that crazy? And I think about service and serving people. Here is Joseph. It seemed like everywhere he went, he got sold to Potiphar, but he was a servant and he served his Lord well, very well. and then thrown into the dungeon, and he served the warden and he served the prisoners very well. And that's something maybe that we should latch on to do as well, that we are about serving people. We're about loving people and helping people. And regardless of what our situation is, whatever our circumstance is within our sphere of influence, I think we should live that way and think about that. Genesis 41, chapter 41, verse 1. And at the end of 2 full years, Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the Nile. And behold, 7 fine-looking and fat cows came up out of the Nile, and they fed in the marsh grass. And behold, after them 7 other cows came up out of the river, ugly and thin, and they stood beside the other cows on the bank of the Nile. The ugly and thin cows ate up the 7 fine-looking and fat cows. And then Pharaoh woke up. I bet he was startled to see something like that. Must have been very vivid, too. Verse 5, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, fat and good. And behold, 7 heads of grain, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. And the thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 fat, full heads of grain. And Pharaoh woke up, and behold, it was a dream. And in the morning, his spirit was troubled. He was really troubled by these dreams. He was trying to figure out, I'm sure he was disturbed. He could tell that they had meaning and significance, but what was it? What in the world does it mean? But it's got to be important. And he sent and he called for all of Egypt's magicians and wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. And then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh and said, today I am reminded of my faults. You know, back in the day, Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream on the same night, he and I. Each man dreamed a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew man was there with us, a slave of the captain of the guard, and we told them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. He interpreted for each man according to his own dream, and just as he interpreted it for us, so it happened. Me, he restored to the office, but him, he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph. He says, I think I want to talk to this guy. And they quickly brought him out of the dungeon. He shaved, changed his clothes, and came before Pharaoh. He took time to get ready. Hebrew men typically would have a beard. Egyptian men did not. And that probably would have given a poor impression if he showed up with the beard. So he shaved and changed his clothes, freshened up, and came before Pharaoh. Boy, just think about that. You're going from the dungeon, come with us, and now the next thing that's going to happen, you're going to be in front of Pharaoh, the Pharaoh of Egypt, an incredibly powerful country. And he's the top guy, Pharaoh. Verse 15, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I've heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it's not me, it's God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. So Pharaoh spoke to Joseph. In my dream, behold, I stood on the bank of the Nile. And he tells him all about these dreams, pretty much word for word. And in verse 25, Joseph said to Pharaoh, after listening to it, he said, look, the dream of Pharaoh is one. What God is about to do, he has declared to Pharaoh. God's telling you what's coming in this dream, and there's one. Verse 26, the 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It's the same 7 years. The dream is one. The 7 thin and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and likewise the 7 empty heads of grain scorched by the east wind. It's the same, it's the next 7 years, but the grain and the ugly cows both are the same 7 years. So it's 7 years and then 7 years. There will be 7 years of famine. That's the message. That's what's coming. There's going to be 7 years of famine. It's just as I said to Pharaoh, what God is about to do, he has shown to Pharaoh. Behold, 7 years of great plenty are coming throughout all the land, but there will arise 7 years of famine after them. And all the plenty in the land of Egypt will be forgotten. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land because of the famine that follows, for it will be very severe. And it's not just Egypt, it's all the land, all the region. Everybody's going to be affected by this. It's 7 years of famine. Verse 32, the dream was doubled to Pharaoh, came to him twice, because the matter is established by God and God will shortly bring it to pass. Numbers in the Bible are used very purposefully, and they typically have certain associations with them. And the number two shows up. And when the number two here, the dream was repeated, so it showed up 2 times. It says that the dream was doubled to Pharaoh, meaning there's 2 times, because the matter is established by God. The two number, when something happens twice, God says something twice, it's established, it's going to happen. And in this case, God will shortly bring it to pass. So now he's received the knowledge, the word of knowledge about what's going to happen. But now here comes revelation wisdom, a manifestation of knowledge that is wisdom oriented. Verse 33. So now what do we do about it? Let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this and let him appoint overseers over the land, collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the hand of Pharaoh for food in the cities and keep it under guard. The food will be held in reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine that will be in the land of Egypt, so that the land does not perish because of the famine. This is the way you can survive. This is the way you can survive. And if you don't do it, you're not going to survive this. It's that severe. Well, the advice was pretty good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. The servants, it isn't referring necessarily to slaves. It's talking about his council, his advisors, the people that he trusts and are with him, that he governs with. Those would be servants, called servants also. And they all thought this is a really good idea. And the Pharaoh said to them, his servants, can we find someone like this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? He recognized Joseph had the Spirit of God. And then Pharaoh said to Joseph, because God has made all this known to you, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You will be over my house, and by your command all my people will be ruled. Only in respect to the throne will I be greater than you. And then Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, I've set you over all the land of Egypt. So Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand. That's what he uses to conduct business. The authority of Pharaoh is on that ring, and he put it on Joseph's hand, giving him the authority of the Pharaoh to conduct business, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, put a gold chain around his neck, and he had him ride in the chariot of his second in command. They cried out before him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Gave him the authority, gave him the responsibility, and gave him what we call today positional authority, that he made sure everybody in the land, in the kingdom, knew who Joseph was, and that he had indeed been given the power that Pharaoh had given him, and he was indeed second in command of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you no one will lift up his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt. Nothing gets done without you. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him Asnath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, as a wife. On is where the temple of the sun god was, and he's a priest, so it kind of makes me think he's marrying a pagan woman, but that's what was like. That's what happened. Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. You know, just think about that. He's in the dungeon. And then he comes out, interprets some dreams. Next thing he knows, he's second in command of all of Egypt. It's remarkable. And yet he must have had the composure and the confidence that he could also conduct it and do a good job with that. He certainly had Yahweh with him, and he was certainly confident, and having God with him is mandatory if you're going to succeed in something like that, I would think. But I just think it's a remarkable transformation. So this has happened. He goes out throughout all the land of Egypt. In the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundantly, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years of plenty in the land of Egypt, stored the food in the cities. In every city, he stored the food from the fields that were around it. Joseph stored up grain like the sand of the sea, very much, so that he stopped counting because it couldn't be measured. There's so much. And before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the names of the firstborn Manasseh because he said, God has made me forget all the toil, all my toil and all my father's house. It's a distant memory now, and Manasseh has helped that. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And both of these children of his will come and get blessed by Jacob down the road. Verse 53, then the 7 years of plenty that were in the land of Egypt came to an end. The 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. Did you notice that? Famine in all lands, including where the Hebrews were living. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do that. The famine was over all the face of the land, and Joseph opened all the storehouses, and he didn't give it away to the Egyptians. He sold it to them. He sold it to the Egyptians. The famine was severe in the land of Egypt, and all the lands came into Egypt to Joseph to buy grain. They came from all over the place, all over the region, to buy grain because the famine was severe in all lands. And by that, they're coming in to buy grain, and Egypt became an incredibly wealthy nation because of this. It accumulated wealth, centralized wealth in all the land in that region, and it ended up in Pharaoh's hands in Egypt. Chapter 42, verse 1 says, when Jacob is in a land of famine too. It is so severe, they're starving too. When Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, why are you standing there looking around at each other? Why aren't you doing something about this? Why aren't you going to Egypt to get some food? I just love that. Why are you there looking at each other? It's time to do something. And that is the effect. We've gone through and seen the journey, life's journey of Joseph getting to the point where now he is in command of all of Egypt. He's controlling the food supply. He's building the wealth of Egypt. And now Jacob, his father, says, hey, without any clue about anything with Joseph, there's grain in Egypt. We need to go get some. And that is where we are going to end this session. It's kind of a cliffhanger ending, but we'll pick it up the next session. But it's just wonderful to think about all these things about Joseph and how God is working with him. I hope and trust that some things popped in your mind and some thoughts occurred to you that you can apply to yourself and your walk, and walk with God in power and might, and with love and serving. And it's a wonderful thing that God has called us to do and to live in this time, which is an incredibly important time as well. So we'll close it there. Thank you for being with me. I look forward to the next session.